Hi guys, welcome back to section 1 of our beginner's guide sketching, and this is episode 2. I'm Dole Blinks and this is Links Art. Here I give you tips, tricks, techniques to get your artworks done in no time. So if you're one in the group, make sure to click and subscribe to the channel, ring all the bells so you don't miss any of my tutorials when I release them. In our previous episode, we briefly talked about what sketching is and the principles and elements required to master the act of sketching. Now, before we move on to what this episode completely entails, I would love to let you know that every episode will be focusing on a particular problem and solving it as well. So, without any further ado, let's dive to our topic for this episode. When it comes to sketching for most beginners, one of the biggest mistakes they do is intense pressure and thick strokes. This is kind of funny because that is pretty much the first thing you do when you pick up a pencil to draw on a paper. So now, before moving on to sketch on our paper or start drawing, we first need to understand the right way to apply our pencil on our paper and what not to do when drawing on the paper. There are a series of reasons why having thick strokes and intense pressure on your paper is completely wrong, and we are going to discuss that and I'm going to show you in this tutorial. So guys, now welcome back to the tutorial. We are going to be using this sheet of paper for example, and I'm going to be giving you 5 reasons why you shouldn't have very thick strokes when you are sketching. This is completely wrong and I'm going to show you how. This is how you make any kind of sketch. So now it is completely wrong to have your sketches as thick as this and with so much pressure to have these kind of dark values on your sketches, but okay to have your sketches light and this amount of thickness, and I'm going to explain. One of the major reasons why you should never start your sketches and make your strokes as thick as this is flexibility and free flow. Now over here it takes an intense pressure for you to start sketching rather than easily moving your hand to draw any item on the paper. Now I can move very freely with my hand and my wrist all through. It's not going to stress me out to sketch anything on paper. I'm going to have that free flow while I sketch. But over here, because you are pressing your hand on the paper, it might likely result to having your graphite lead broken, and you are not going to have that complete flexibility to move your hand. And trust me, flexibility and free flow is one of the biggest trainings you need to enable you draw like a professional. Another reason why you should never have your strokes as thick as this or have this kind of pressure is the presence of bump, which is so unprofessional. Now let me show you this. If I should turn this paper around, you are going to see the pressure reflecting all the way back here, but you hardly see any of that here. It's so unprofessional to have things like this because this can easily rupture your paper. It depends on the quality of the paper and how the paper is made. Sometimes it can easily bore hole on the paper and the paper can easily get torn because of the pressure you are adding to it. Now, sorry I did this I did intentionally. But just for an example, it's very possible to apply too much pressure on the paper in order to achieve this, hence having your paper burst like this. Now, the third reason why you should never sketch like this as a beginner or a professional is the inability to erase correctly or make any kind of correction. Nobody is perfect. There are sometimes you just want to remove some of those sketches or try to make an adjustment. Let's say we have this as a sketch here and I would want to erase this. Now, no matter how I apply pressure in trying to erase this, we are still going to have visible lines all through. So now it's a lot easier to erase a very tiny stroke rather than erasing a very thick stroke. As you can see here, I can easily erase this area almost seamless, but we can see the line. No matter how you try to erase this out, it is not completely going to get off the paper because of the pressure that has been added to the paper. The pencil has pushed its way down to the level where the eraser can no longer remove. Now, this can really affect your shading, which we are going to discuss on later. So this is another reason why you should never ever try to have thick strokes like this when you are sketching. The fourth reason why you should never have thick strokes like this when you are sketching is that your sketches are simply guides, not part of your finished work. So you should never treat your sketching as a finished work. These are just simple guides to tell you that this area is going to be bright, this area is going to be dark, and so on and so forth. So the fifth and the most important reason why you should never ever try to sketch like this is the effect is going to have on your shading. So if you have strokes that are thick as this, when you try to shade, you are definitely going to have those strokes at the corners. And realistic artworks normally don't have sharp strokes like this. They only have a difference, which is contrast between the light value and dark value. That is common when it comes to creating very realistic artworks. Over here, I can easily shade without having those thick strokes and lines. If you have thick strokes in your drawing, it can definitely mess up your shading, which is one of the biggest cons ever. So you want to learn how to have very light strokes when you're drawing. That is the very best way to sketch professionally. So now, let's say I had very thick strokes here as my sketch, like what we can see over here in this piece of artwork. It will be completely difficult for me to blend them and then get the shading I want. You are always going to see some lines that were unable to be blended into the background, like this we are seeing here. So having very thick strokes in your sketching can really affect your shading. That is the reason why most beginners' artworks tend to look so unrealistic. Your sketches can greatly affect your drawing. So you want to have that in mind when sketching. Some persons can find it very hard to sketch like this because they've been sketching like this all through and they just can't help but sketch like this. And some persons don't know, so they are just intentionally doing this. If you're intentionally doing this, I think this is the right time to stop doing this and start doing this. Now, there are three ways to make sure your sketches are always looking like this. I think the first thing for you to do is understanding pen pressure. Pen pressure is just simply the amount of pressure you add to your pencil to determine how light is going to be or how thick the strokes are going to become. Now, the amount of pressure I added to my pencil was what determined how thick or how light my strokes become. The next thing you can do to avoid situations like this is understanding the material you're working with. Right now, I am having a 4B pencil. This is part of the pencils that give you very dark values. If you're using a darker value, it requires that you use very less pressure to get those light strokes. And if you are using a lighter value, which is the H value, as you can see here, H5, I can easily press the paper and it's never going to give me anything like this because this is a hard value. But with this one, a 4B pencil, it can easily go very dark, except I try to use a very light pressure. That is when it's going to come out like this, which is most preferred. Now, the next thing you can do to avoid outcomes like this is trying to use the right pen for the right function. Now, this is what I mean. Normally, it is not always ideal to use very dark values to sketch. It is best using your H pencils, which are your light valued pencils, to sketch rather than using your B values. Now, if you don't know how your graphite values work, which is your H and your B in your pencil set, you can go ahead and watch this video that is showing on the screen, which talks about pencil grades and values. Simply put, your B values are normally the black values. They normally give you very dark values, and your H values are the hard ones. The lead is very hard, so it's much harder to scrub off from the lead, hence making your values a lot lighter, and you are not going to be having very thick stroke. As a beginner, I recommend you use your H pencils, starting with your HB pencil down to your lightest values, which is possibly your H5, H6, or whichever higher number of the H you are having inside the drawing set. Those are the pencils that are required when it comes to making any kind of sketch. So now, having known that, you want to try as much as you can to avoid having thick strokes, because in the long run, it's really going to help you become a more professional artist when it comes to sketching. So guys, if there is any question with regards to what I just said here, make sure to drop a comment in the comment section, and I'll try my best to get in touch with you or reply you. So guys, thank you very much for watching. That will be all for this episode. Moving on to episode 3, as we'll be focusing our attention on solving another problem that has to do with sketching. I'm Doug Links, and this is Links Art. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, ring all the bells so you don't miss any of my tutorials when I release them. Till I see you in episode 3, keep creating.